It was just past 3:40 a.m. when the sirens wailed across Tel Aviv. Residents jolted awake, scrambling for shelter as the unmistakable sound of incoming fire echoed through the city. Moments later, a ballistic missile, launched from Yemen by the Iran-backed Houthi rebels, struck the Jaffa district, carving a crater into a public playground and shattering windows across nearby residential blocks. 16 civilians were injured, most by flying glass, some while rushing to safety. The Israeli Defense Forces confirmed the missile had evaded interception attempts, marking a rare and deeply unsettling breach of the country's air defense systems. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of months of escalating tension between Israel and the Houthis, who had vowed to retaliate for Israeli airstrikes on Gaza and Yemen. The Houthis' military spokesman, Yahya Sarria, announced the launch of a hypersonic ballistic missile aimed at what he called a sensitive target in southern Tel Aviv. The strike temporarily halted air traffic at Ben Gurion Airport and sent thousands into bomb shelters. It was a chilling reminder that Yemen's promise to flatten Tel Aviv was not just rhetoric, it was operational. The Israeli response was swift. Within hours, the Air Force launched a barrage of retaliatory strikes on Houthi military sites in Sana'a, Yemen's capital. 7 key targets were hit, including intelligence compounds and weapons storage facilities. Defense Minister Israel Katz declared the operation a success, claiming dozens of Houthi operatives were killed and critical infrastructure destroyed. But the damage in Tel Aviv had already been done. For many Israelis, the idea of a missile from Yemen reaching their city was once unthinkable. Now it was reality. The shockwaves of the missile strike reverberated far beyond Tel Aviv. In Washington, the Pentagon issued a statement condemning the attack and reaffirming its support for Israel's right to defend itself. Meanwhile, in Tehran, state media celebrated the Houthis' strategic victory, framing it as a blow against Western imperialism and Zionist aggression. The regional narrative was splitting in two. One side saw a reckless escalation, the other a justified retaliation. But on the ground, in Tel Aviv's hospitals and emergency shelters, the conversation was far more personal. Parents held their children close, whispering reassurances they barely believed themselves. The fear was palpable, and the questions were immediate. How did this happen, and what comes next? Security analysts pointed to a growing axis of resistance stretching from Lebanon to Yemen, coordinated and emboldened by Iran. The Houthis, once dismissed as a ragtag militia, had evolved into a formidable force capable of long-range precision strikes. Their missile technology, reportedly enhanced by Iranian engineers, had leapfrogged expectations. Israeli intelligence had warned of this possibility months ago, but few anticipated the Houthis would actually follow through. Now, the calculus had changed. Israel wasn't just facing threats from its northern border, it was being targeted from 2,000 kilometers away. Inside the Knesset, lawmakers clashed over the appropriate response. Some called for a full-scale military campaign against Houthi positions in Yemen, while others urged restraint, fearing a broader regional war. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu convened an emergency cabinet meeting, emphasizing the need for strategic clarity and operational precision. But clarity was elusive. The Houthis had made good on their promise, and Tel Aviv had paid the price. The question wasn't whether Israel would respond. It was how far it was willing to go. In the heart of Tel Aviv, life resumed, but not without a shift in tone. The city's rhythm, once marked by cafe chatter and beachside strolls, now pulsed with a quiet vigilance. Schools reopened under tighter security. Military vehicles patrolled major intersections. The hum of normalcy was pierced by the knowledge that another missile could come at any moment. For many Israelis, this wasn't just a geopolitical event, it was personal. The playground that was hit had hosted birthday parties just days before. The shattered windows belonged to homes filled with memories. The war, once distant, had arrived at their doorstep. Meanwhile, in Yemen, the Houthis released footage of the missile launch. The video, broadcast on Al Masirah TV, showed a sleek projectile rising into the night sky, followed by chants of death to Israel. The message was clear. This was not a one-off. It was a declaration of capability and intent. Analysts noted the sophistication of the launch system, suggesting external support. Iran's fingerprints were everywhere, from the missile's design to the rhetoric surrounding its deployment. The Houthis, emboldened by regional alliances, were no longer acting alone. International reaction was mixed. The United Nations called for restraint, urging both sides to avoid further escalation. But behind closed doors, diplomats scrambled. Saudi Arabia, long at odds with the Houthis, quietly expressed concern over the growing reach of their arsenal. Egypt and Jordan reinforced border security. The Gulf states, wary of being drawn into a broader conflict, began contingency planning. The region was holding its breath. One missile had shifted the balance. And while Tel Aviv counted its wounds, Yemen celebrated its strike. The contrast was stark, pain on one side, pride on the other. And the world watched, knowing this was only the beginning. The Israeli military's retaliation was not just swift, it was calculated. Satellite-guided bombs struck Houthi launch sites in Hajj and Sada provinces, targeting underground bunkers and mobile missile platforms. Footage released by the IDF showed precision strikes lighting up the night sky over Yemen. But even as Israel flexed its military muscle, the Houthis responded with defiance. Their spokesperson declared that Tel Aviv will burn again and warned of further attacks unless Israel ceased its operations in Gaza. The message was clear. This was not a one-time exchange. It was the opening act of a new front in a multi-layered conflict. Inside Israel, the public mood shifted from shock to resolve. Volunteers flooded blood banks. Reservists reported for duty in record numbers. Social media filled with images of unity, families huddled in shelters, soldiers embracing before deployment, citizens clearing rubble from damaged streets. The pain was real, but so was the determination. Tel Aviv, a city known for its vibrancy and resilience, was not backing down. The missile had left a scar, but it had also ignited a fire. In Yemen, the Houthis celebrated the strike as a symbolic victory. Crowds gathered in Sana'a, waving flags and chanting slogans. For them, the missile represented more than military prowess. It was a statement of relevance. Long marginalized in regional politics, the Houthis had forced the world to take notice. Their reach had extended beyond the Red Sea, beyond the Arabian Peninsula, all the way to the heart of Israel. And that reach, they claimed, was just beginning. The international community braced for what came next. Intelligence agencies tracked new missile movements. Embassies issued travel warnings. The region, already volatile, now faced a new axis of confrontation. And in Tel Aviv, the countdown to the next siren had already begun. As night fell over Tel Aviv, the city remained tense but defiant. Families gathered around televisions, watching updates with a mix of dread and determination. The streets were quieter than usual, but not empty. People walked with purpose, checking on neighbors, sharing supplies, and offering comfort. The missile strike had left a physical mark, but it had also carved a deeper emotional one. For many, this was a moment of reckoning. The illusion of distance from conflict had shattered. Yemen, once seen as a faraway battleground, had become a direct threat. And the Houthis, once dismissed as fringe actors, had proven their reach. In Yemen, the narrative was triumphant. Houthi leaders declared the strike a turning point in the struggle against Zionist aggression. Their supporters flooded social media with celebratory posts, framing the attack as a victory for oppressed peoples across the Middle East. The symbolism was potent. A missile from one of the region's poorest nations had pierced the defenses of one of its most powerful. It was a David and Goliath moment, and the Houthis were reveling in it. But beneath the surface, the stakes were rising. Intelligence reports indicated further missile deployments in northern Yemen. Israeli analysts warned that the Houthis might attempt another strike within days. The IDF raised its alert level, deploying additional Iron Dome batteries and scrambling reconnaissance drones over the Red Sea. Diplomats worked overtime, trying to prevent a broader war. And in Tel Aviv, people braced themselves, not just for the next missile, but for the uncertainty that now defined their reality. The promise to flatten Tel Aviv had been made. The first blow had landed. What came next was anyone's guess. But one thing was clear. The rules of engagement had changed, and the region would never be the same.